OpenAI just came out with their largest and best model for chat yet, the GPT 4.5. It has a larger knowledge base, it's more creative, and even has emotional intelligence. Or at least that's what OpenAI claims. Well, in this video, we're going to push GPT 4.5 to its limit by testing it in three main business applications: customer service, coaching and feedback, and content creation. So let's get started. If you're new to the channel, my name is Matt Paiva. I build AI solutions for businesses, especially on the sales and marketing side of things. And recently, just on February 27th of last month, OpenAI introduced GPT 4.5, and I was reading their product release over here, and I thought it was really interesting. They even had some use cases here that showing how GPT 4.5 compared with GPT 4.0 and other models as well. And I noticed that these use cases were not business related. As we can see, we have a use case on helping a user through a tough time, another use case on identifying a painting, and another use case on space exploration. So I decided to take it upon myself to test this new model with business cases that are actually relevant for business owners. And if you're wondering why I chose customer service, coaching and feedback, and content creation, it's because according to what OpenAI is claiming on the improvements of the GPT 4.5 in comparison to its predecessors, it seems like these three areas would be key areas that businesses can start using this new model for their operations, right? So let's open up OpenAI's playground to test out these models against each other. And the first example that we have over here is the customer service example. As you can see on the screen, we have the OpenAI playground open up, and we have this really cool feature in the playground that we can test one model against the other. And over here, I have the exact same system prompt for an empathetic customer support representative. And this is exactly what I want this GPT model to be representing. And we're going to compare the GPT 4.0 mini against the GPT 4.5. And as you guys can see in the system prompt, we have a task that asks the GPT model to write an empathetic yet professional email response to a customer inquiry. And we have the exact same question happening over here. So for the sake of the video, I wrote out this quick email that says that an automation for inbound leads stopped working and that they need my help immediately. I'm using my business here as an example just because I feel like this would be really easy for me to judge if this type of response coming from Chat GPT or from the GPT models is actually something that I would be replying with or something that I think is better objectively from one system to the other. So just to read the email out loud and keep you guys in the loop, it says, "Hi Matt, our automation for handling inbound leads has suddenly stopped working and is starting to worry everyone here. We're not sure what triggered it, but it's clearly causing some panic amongst the team. We're not receiving the research of the lead when they come in through the website anymore. Could you please fix it as soon as you can?" So let's send this to both models and see what they come up with. GPT 4.0 mini right off the bat is really quick with coming up with a response. And it already writes a response by asking what happened when you first noticed the problem and if there's any specific errors. But let's wait until GPT 4.5 can come up with a better response, and let's see how each one of the models approaches this problem. All right, so let's take a deeper look into the responses coming in from GPT 4.0 and GPT 4.5. It's super clear how each one of the models attacks the problem. As we could see right off the bat, the GPT 4.0 mini was super quick with coming up with a response email. In fact, it took what it looks like over here for 4.8 seconds to come up with a response. Meanwhile, the GPT 4.5 model took 34 seconds to come up with a response. Now, if we're comparing the actual content of this email, we can see that both of them actually start out by saying, "Thank you for reaching out and sharing your concerns." This one says, "Thank you so much for contacting us right away." But the one thing that I notice is how they attack the concern of the client. So GPT 4.0 says, "I completely understand how concerning it can be when a vital part of your workflow stops functioning." And GPT 4.5 actually has a much better approach. Like, it sounds so much more human and it sounds like it's empathizing with the user. It says, "I'm deeply sorry to hear about the disruption in your inbound lead automation. I completely understand how critical this functionality is for your team and how concerning it must be for you." Like, in this sense, when you're reading this, if I receive this email and I'm the customer, I would definitely be like, this sounds a little bit AI generated, but it gives me more reassurance than this. Like, this first sentence right off the "thank you for sharing your concerns" gives me a lot more reassurance on the GPT 4.5 model. Now, the key difference between these two emails that actually gives so much more points to GPT 4.5 in comparison to GPT 4.0 is this second paragraph over here, where GPT 4.5 says, "My priority is to get the issue resolved for you immediately. I've already escalated this matter to our technical support team, and we're actively investigating why your automation has stopped providing the lead research data from your website submission." And this is different from the GPT 4.0 mini results, because the approach that it's taking it over here is to ask 3 main questions. And it even says after the list of questions that once I have this information, I can work with our technical team to expedite a solution. Now, from a communications point of view, we can see how like being proactive shows so much more to the customer that you care, right? And GPT 4.5 nails this really, really well. So I really like this approach, and it shows how the model has improved, especially when it comes to that emotional intelligence and essentially that communication trick of showing that we're already doing something about it. I like the way it's approached this. Even at the very end, I like how GPT 4.5 handles the ending of the paragraph as well. GPT 4.0 says that like, "We appreciate your patience and we're looking into the matter. Your business operations are important and we're here to support." But the way that GPT 4.5 tackles it is like, "If there's anything further to do to support you, or if you have any additional details, please don't hesitate to contact me directly." This just shows so much more character in a way. Like I like this sentence of "please don't hesitate to contact me directly." And like you guys know from before, the system prompt was exactly the same, and the message that we sent to the system was also exactly the same. So I actually am giving a lot of points to GPT 4.5 here, and I like the way it's handling the customer support interaction by a lot. Okay, so for our next test, we're going to compare these GPT's abilities of giving coaching and feedback. And how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to provide a fake call transcript between a customer service rep and a potential Karen, and where the customer service had a tough interaction with this Karen. And essentially what we want is for this system to give feedback to the customer service representative on how they should act in the future. Now, this idea directly comes from an article that I read, and I actually made a video about that article that you can go and watch over here. And this article talked about a company that came up with a very clever way of improving their customer service by creating these feedback loops between AI and their customer service representatives. And I thought that was super interesting, because normally you see companies just creating a chatbot that handles questions on its own, and this company just went a different route where customer service representatives were submitting their call transcripts to an LLM model or to a system that connected to an LLM model and provided coaching and feedback based on these call transcripts. So that's exactly what we're trying to do here. And in terms of our system prompt, we are using the same exact system prompt again for this fake company called Tech Ease, which is supposed to be kind of like a Dropbox copy. And essentially what we're asking it to do at the very end, we're asking the system to deliver insightful, empathetic, and practical coaching feedback to our customer service representative to build their confidence and sharpen their skills. So that's exactly what we're going to be doing. And we already have our fake call transcript over here that was generated recently. And essentially the problem that Karen was having is that after an update, all of her files disappeared, and John just seems to be a rookie and not exactly sure of what he is doing. So that should be a fun one for us to play around with. All right, let's pretend like we're John and let's upload this file over here. We have the customer service call transcript over here, and we're just gonna say something very simple with like, "Please help me improve based on this call. I had a tough time dealing with this Karen." And we're gonna press enter. Now let's see what each one of the systems is going to come up with. Okay, so I've read both of the feedbacks coming in from GPT 4.0 and GPT 4.5, and I have some thoughts, but let's cover the basics from the get-go. We can see that the GPT 4.0 model took 15 seconds to do this approach over here, and it had 1,062 tokens coming in and 632 tokens coming out, while GPT 4.5 took 111 seconds, almost 2 minutes to do this interaction, same amount of tokens coming in and about 400 more coming out, 300 and something, 400 more coming out. Now, that's a key difference because these token usages are directly correlated with how much it costs to run these automations, which is a topic that we're going to cover in a different video. But just a quick FYI, GPT 4.5 is incredibly more expensive than GPT 4.0. So keep that in mind. Now, in terms of the structure and the actual content that we had from GPT 4.0 and GPT 4.5, the first opening sentences, I don't see much of a difference. I like GPT 4.5's approach because it kind of establishes a safe environment for John to talk to this AI, essentially by like saying, "Hi, John," like replying it to the person's name. "Hi, John. I appreciate that you're reaching out for coaching after this interaction." This kind of just sets the tone, and I like that. But on the other hand, we have pretty much just saying feedback summary for John. "Thank you for submitting the call transcript for review. I can see that you faced a challenging situation with a customer, and it's important to acknowledge some of the interactions can be particularly tough." So it just depends on how, I don't know, how much you want this tool to be sensitive to the person's feeling on the other end. I guess that depending on how the customer service representatives are, if they're like super hardcore customer service representatives, they've seen all that can be seen, dealt with every type of Karen out there, they might not need this super nice, warming, welcoming approach. Meanwhile, a rookie might take more advantage of dealing with this. But so far, the first paragraph doesn't strike me as incredibly different between these two. Obviously, there are these tone differences that give extra points for GPT 4.5. So in terms of structure, they both move on to the strengths portion. GPT 4.0 mini comes up with two different strengths, which are acknowledgement of the issue and determination to assist, while GPT 4.5 comes up with three. One is staying polite and calm. Two is showing willingness to help, and three is finding a resolution successfully. Now, I agree with the last two, and actually to the first one, in the call transcript, you can see that it stayed, like John stayed polite. I wouldn't necessarily know if it's like if John was calm, because in this call transcript, we have a lot of these like, ohs, okay, let me see. And this could be very much tone. Like when I read the transcript, I felt like John was nervous, but obviously this could have been interpreted in a completely different way depending on how John's tone was actually in the call. So I think it's interesting how GPT 4.5 identified this as calm. And just a quick note on how it's interpreting these tone differences when reading a transcript. Obviously very different types of inputs when you're listening to a call recording versus reading a call transcript. Now let's go to the meat of it. In terms of the areas of improvement, both systems came up with 5 different areas of improvement. And when reading these areas of improvement, I could see that number 1, number 2, number 5 were pretty much the same for GPT 4.0 and GPT 4.5, but they do tackle it in different ways. So number 1, for example, it's talking about empathy, and on GPT 4.5 side, we see that it talks about empathizing immediately and clearly. Number 2 is clear communication, and then the other one is choosing words carefully and avoiding phrases that sound uncertain or casual. So a little bit different approach over here, but tackling the same meat, the same type of content of the call. And last but not least, number 5 deals with closing the call on a positive note. And for GPT 4.5, it talks about closing could be more supportive. Now, even in these 3 points where they are tackling the same type of problem, I do prefer GPT 4.5. I do think that it's coming up with better advice over here. For example, in every context, it talks about the original thing that John said, how it could be improved, and why. Meanwhile, when we're looking at GPT 4.0 mini, we just have one bullet point with the example of what could have been improved. So what I'm trying to say is that even when they're talking about the same thing, GPT 4.5 has a little bit of a better approach, which I like, but they're both talking about the same thing, and it could go from expectation of the user. Like if the user expects the model to be able to be like pinpoint exactly what was said and to show an improved version, GPT 4.5 seems to be more intuitive with that. Although we could very likely just prompt this into the system prompt of just saying that the standard operating procedure is to point out the original quote and then outline an improved quote and a measure as of why it should be like that. It just seems that GPT 4.5 is a lot more intuitive in coming up with these ideas than GPT 4.0 mini. Now, the key difference in content here was on point number 3 and point number 4. GPT 4.0 mini said to John avoid jargon because John said optimize storage on the call and to have more confidence, be more confident in the responses. Meanwhile, GPT 4.5 talked about validating the customer's feelings without taking complaints personally and providing clear next steps. I really do like the clear next steps portion, especially because of this quote over here where it talks about, do you need assistance to move these files back right now? Or would you like me to share a help article or guide that walks you through step by step? Just for a little bit of context, the call ends the call is generated by Karen because after an update, she lost all her files. And John doesn't really tackle this very clearly at the very end. He just says, okay, well, if you need anything else, feel free to call us back. Have a nice day. Like, it would have been much better to say something like this as GPT 4.5 outlined. Now, in terms of content, like GPT 4.0 says to avoid jargon, which is actually good. But when you're comparing it with validating customer feelings, like for a customer service representative, which one is more important? To validate a customer's feelings without taking complaints personally or to avoid jargon? I would say with 100% confidence that validating a customer's feelings is a lot more important for a customer service representative. So to wrap this portion up on what could have been improved on John's side, I do prefer GPT's 4.5. Although I think that the disparity is closer here. I feel like GPT 4.0 found some good points to talk about, and I purposefully left the system prompt a lot more broad to see the types of differences that it would come up with. But we could, like I said before, prompt the system to always say the original customer statement, the improved representative response, and why that is the better approach. It's just good to see that GPT 4.5 can intuitively do that. Also, before I forget, GPT 4.5 is showing better emotional intelligence like OpenAI claimed. Like, I am really impressed with these outputs from GPT 4.5 over here. And I think that it's doing a great job at identifying exactly the tone differences and the actual concerns that a customer service representative should be aware of when interacting with frustrated customers. So that's a really good point on GPT 4.5. I actually do see how the emotional intelligence has been implemented here. Now, this last portion over here, GPT 4.0 talks about tips for the future interactions, and GPT 4.5 has a personal action plan for future calls. One has 3 main points, the other one has 5 main points. And I actually thought that I don't know if I would say that I preferred GPT 4.0 mini. I thought it was more straightforward, and I liked that, especially on this portion over here where it talks about practice active listening, and it outlines, like, it says exactly what it's talking about, like repeat back some of the key points the customer made to confirm understanding. And this is something that GPT 4.5 did not come up with. This model is a lot more focused on immediately empathizing and then actually dealing with the emotions over here. So I don't know, in my personal point of view, I liked this first point better, but it does seem similar. They both have this same point on maintaining professionalism over here. And then the key difference is that GPT 4.0 asks John to stay informed, because in the call it sounds like he's not aware of what happened with the update and what could have changed. This could be interpreted as a little bit like not good, like a shot to John. Like, John could be well aware he was just nervous and he's a rookie. Who knows? I'm not too sure if this is the best tips for the future that GPT 4.0 could have come up with. I also don't love these last 3. I think that these are, aside from the last one over here, like, end on a sincere, empathetic note, I think that these 2 are really vague and broad in a way, like positive channel frustration and ensure clarity and set expectations is kind of, I don't know. It's a bit broad. I do, like, if you really think about it, setting expectations and ensuring clarity is important, but what does positive channel frustration mean? You know what I mean? Like, there wasn't really a clear point. And last but not least, the final thoughts. I think that both systems over here came up with a decent result. GPT 4.0 says that you're doing an excellent job tackling complex and sometimes frustrating issues. I wouldn't say excellent based on the call transcript, but that's okay. Meanwhile, GPT 4.5 said that you handled a challenging interaction under pressure and ultimately resolved the core problem, something you should be proud of, which is like a good thing, something that you might hear from a therapist or something, or a nice boss. Let's put it like that. After you've been through a tough time. Yeah, I just don't love the word excellent job here. But I still think that the final thoughts are one of the last things that we should be worried about when it comes to this type of output. So to sum up this test, I am definitely giving the points to GPT 4.5. I think that in terms of the content and the areas of improvement, which is the key portion of this test, it did a really good job, both in structuring the response by showing the original, the improved, and the why, and by choosing these two different points that are different from GPT 4.0, the provide clear next steps as well as the validate customers' feelings. Like this was a key one that should have been over here and was not necessarily here on GPT 4.0 mini. Like that was one of the key ones that I was looking for, and I'm glad that GPT 4.5 spotted that. Now, like I said before, this did take 2 minutes to generate and it took more tokens. So something to keep in mind. Now, last but not least, we're going to be looking at how these models deal with content creation. And instead of doing this process in the playground for OpenAI, I actually set up this really simple automation here in make.com where we have a set variable, which is going to be a script for one of my old videos. And then essentially what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to create a LinkedIn version of that video using GPT 4.5 versus GPT 4, and then evaluating that output following a strict criteria and using the GPT 4.0 mini to evaluate that output. So just for the sake of transparency, both models, the GPT 4.5 and GPT 4, are using the exact same prompt over here. And in this scenario, we are asking both models to generate a LinkedIn post based on a video script, and the instructions are exactly the same in either case. And then at the very end, we are providing the script down here. This is for GPT 4.5, and then here is for GPT 4, and I'm using GPT-4 instead of 4.0 just because I wanted to compare to a different model this time, even though in most cases I do use 4.0 or 4.0 mini for these. And you can see here, same exact prompt of generating the system. And our different prompt is going to be our evaluator prompt, which essentially is going to read both of the outputs coming in from these previous models, from these previous completions, and they're gonna come up with a better response after. Like it's gonna look at both of these posts and is going to evaluate on a scale from 0 to 5, and it's going to let us know which one it prefers. I also didn't include any mention to the models to not bias the evaluation over here. So in this scenario here, the model only knows that there is a LinkedIn version 1 and a LinkedIn version 2, and it doesn't know which model is creating which. It doesn't even know that there are different types of models creating different types of content, or exactly the same content but with different models in this scenario. So let's test this out, and we're going to get this output in a Google Docs for us. Okay, so our system already evaluated both LinkedIn posts, and it says that LinkedIn post number 1 was better, and LinkedIn post number 1 was GPT 4.5. Now, it says that GPT 4.5 had a score of 4.5 out of 5, while GPT 4 had a 3.5 out of 5. And our evaluator was looking at 10 different things, including how attention grabbing the post was, the structure of the post, how clear it was, and the overall presentation of how that looks on LinkedIn. Now, it also goes on to say that the winning post won because of the better hook. And if we look over here, the hook for post 1 was, imagine waking up tomorrow and realizing that your number 1 source of new leads vanished overnight. How would your business survive? Meanwhile, post number 2 started with, picture this, your main lead source disappears overnight. And I would argue that the first one is a little bit better. It also mentioned that the post number 1 had actionable insights, and I do agree. It's breaking things down in a really clear step-by-step way. Step number 1, step number 2, step number 3. And meanwhile, over here in post number 2, we have kind of like subheadings, but we don't really have steps, which shows how much better GPT 4.5 was at doing that. Also, it's mentioning the easy to scan structure. Post number 1 relies on a lot of bullet points over here, and post number 2 is relying mostly on paragraphs. I personally prefer bullet points. I actually think they're much easier to read, much more straight to the point. And last but not least, it says that the post number 1 wins, or our GPT 4.5 wins, because it is emotionally resonant. It says that it's good at building and addressing the anxiety associated with losing your number 1 lead source. And I can agree with that. We can actually see how it tackles that right from the first from the first sentence, right? And even another thing that I noticed that the evaluator didn't pick up is this little thing over here. This is on GPT-4. It has a subheading for a CTA. And even though we are instructing the models to have a CTA, we don't want the post to clearly say CTA, right? Like that's just awkward. And here on post version number 1, the CTA is like, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What's your most impactful lead generation channel right now? And if that channel disappeared, what's the backup plan? So yeah, this I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm assuming is the CTA. Could be a little bit more clear. Like I'd comment down below or something like that. I thought that post number 2 was slightly awkward on that. So as you guys can see, GPT 4.5 lives up to the hype. It was really good with the customer service interactions. I thought it was really good coaching our customer service rep as well. And last but not least, it was better at creating content than GPT-4. So the only trade-off that we're looking is that this system takes up a lot more time. But not only does it take up a lot more time, it's a lot more expensive than GPT-4o or 4 or 4o mini. And if we're looking at this table over here that compares the price for inputs and the price for outputs, don't worry about this cached input. This is a very specific type of scenario. We can see that it costs $75 for 1 million tokens for GPT 4.5. Meanwhile, it only costs $250 for 1 million tokens for GPT-4o and only 15 cents for GPT-4o mini. So just to make this really clear, it means that for every prompt that you run, just the prompt itself is going to be 30 times more expensive than GPT-4o and 500 times more expensive than GPT-4o mini. This is a huge jump. And in terms of output, we have that cut by half, meaning that it will be 15 times more expensive than 4o and 250 times more expensive than 4o mini. This is a really huge jump in price that raises the question, when should you actually be using GPT 4.5? When should you be making that trade-off of time and money to justify that in your business? And that's exactly what I want to cover in a different video, but I just wanted you guys to be aware that these performance improvements always come with a cost, and in this scenario it is a monetary cost and a time cost. So keep that in mind if you are moving any of your automations to this new model, especially if you're doing it for all of your business. Now I'm gonna make a video talking about when to actually do this move and when to actually do this change, so when that video is out you can go and watch it over here. In the meantime, if you are building any AI systems for your business and you just don't have the time or you are confused on how to do it, feel free to book a call with me down below. It's completely free and I can see if I can help you build the AI systems that your business needs. But if you want to get started right away, there's also a free link down below that you can get access to all of the templates that I show in these videos, including this template over here that you can get access to if you want to compare GPT 4.5 to GPT-4 and evaluate that output for LinkedIn later down the line. Now, with all of that being said, if you are learning about AI and automation here, YouTube actually thinks that you will benefit from this video that's popping up over here. So feel free to go and watch that. And that's all that I had for you today. So I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.